European and Iran's top diplomats are set to meet today in Geneva for talks, and a federal appeals court has ruled that President Trump can continue to command California's National Guard in Los Angeles. Good morning. I'm Windsor Johnston from NPR News, and here are some of today's top stories. European diplomats are gathering today in Geneva amid the escalating conflict between Israel and Iran. The foreign ministers are scheduled to discuss Tehran's nuclear program with Iran's top diplomat. NPR's Lauren Frere reports this is the first round of face-to-face talks with Iranian officials since Israel launched a series of airstrikes against Iran last week.
The foreign ministers of Britain, France, Germany, and the European Union are all meeting Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. The Europeans are urging a return to diplomacy after days of war, but Tehran wants Israeli bombings to end first, with Iranian state TV quoting Araghchi as saying there's no room for negotiations with the U.S. until Israeli aggression stops. The Trump administration says it'll decide within 2 weeks whether to join Israeli attacks. British Foreign Minister David Lammy says that's the window now for any diplomatic solution. Lauren Frere, NPR News, London.
President Trump continues to weigh whether the U.S. will enter the war between Israel and Iran. The White House says he'll make the decision within the next 2 weeks. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf reports the U.S. possesses a bomb that is thought to be capable of reaching even Iran's most well-protected nuclear facility.
The most fortified nuclear facility in Iran is called Fordow, located deep inside a mountain. And the U.S. has the only bomb that could damage it. Because of its size, that 30,000-pound bomb can only be carried by a B-2 stealth bomber, also something only the U.S. has. Most experts agree that the bomb could cause serious, possibly even debilitating damage to the facility, although it could take several hits. The real question is whether that would stop Iran's nuclear program or simply put it on hold, as Iran would still have the scientists and knowledge to start it back up again. Meanwhile, the International Atomic Energy Agency has warned such an attack could cause radioactive contamination. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Washington.
A federal appeals court says President Trump can keep control of the National Guard troops deployed to Los Angeles. Steve Futterman reports the state had filed a lawsuit.
The unanimous ruling by the 3-judge panel means that the National Guard troops can stay deployed here in L.A. California Governor Gavin Newsom had argued that the president exceeded his powers when he federalized the troops. But the panel concluded that the conditions in L.A., with police and protesters having repeated confrontations, were sufficient enough to give the president the power to take such action. Trump called it a big win in his social media post. A district court had previously ruled that the protests did not pose enough of a threat to allow Trump to deploy the Guard. This does not end the battle. California is still trying to restrict what National Guard troops can do while they are deployed. For NPR News, I'm Steve Futterman in Los Angeles.
ICE immigration raids have continued at a number of Home Depots and some car washes in Los Angeles. Steve Futterman reports the Los Angeles Dodgers say agents who showed up at their stadium on Thursday were turned away.
In a social media post, the LA Dodgers say ICE agents came to the stadium and requested permission to access the parking lots. The Dodgers say they were denied entry. The team did not indicate why ICE might have wanted to enter the parking areas. DHS responded saying, quote, "This had nothing to do with the Dodgers." The agency's post says that Customs and Border Protection vehicles were in the parking lot briefly, quote, "unrelated to any operation or enforcement." The Dodgers have come under criticism by some fans for essentially saying nothing last week about the ICE operations and protests in L.A. For NPR News, I'm Steve Futterman in Los Angeles.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says Ottawa will impose new tariffs on U.S. steel and aluminum imports starting on July 21st. But as Dan Karpinchuk reports, Carney says that will depend on trade negotiations with the United States.
Carney would not say what the new tariffs would be, but July 21st coincides with the end of the 30-day deadline for a trade deal that was mentioned when Carney and President Trump met on the sidelines of the G7. Carney also says Ottawa will limit federal procurement policies to favor Canadian suppliers and what he describes as reliable trading partners. And he will announce new retroactive tariff quota rates on imports of steel products from non-free trade agreement countries. They will be at 100% of the 2024 levels. There will also be task forces for steel and aluminum to help guide the government's decision-making. Earlier this month, President Trump doubled existing tariffs on steel and aluminum imports to 50%. For NPR News, I'm Dan Karpenchuk in Toronto.
President Trump is changing long-standing norms governing the civil service. For more than a century, federal employees have enjoyed strong job protections aimed at ensuring their work is free from political interference. NPR's Andrea Hsu reports this administration sees things differently.
President Trump has long talked of dismantling what he calls the deep state. He says there are too many people in the government intent on obstructing his policies and goals. Now his administration is taking steps to convert tens of thousands of civil servants into at-will employees, those whose jobs are, quote, policy influencing. The administration says doing so will ensure that Trump can carry out the work the American people elected him to do. His critics say Trump is trying to politicize the federal workforce. They warn if civil servants can be fired based on political whim, the government will lose the expertise it needs to run the country, and the American people would suffer. Andrea Hsu, NPR News.
A dual U.S.-Israeli citizen has returned to the United States. Idon Alexander had been held by Hamas militants until his release in May. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf reports that Alexander was the last surviving American hostage in Gaza.
Crowds lined the streets in Tenafly, New Jersey, waving Israeli and U.S. flags and cheering as an SUV brought the 21-year-old back home. Alexander was captured while on duty, serving as an Israeli soldier during the Hamas attack on southern Israel in October of 2023. He was released last month in a standalone deal negotiated between President Trump's administration and Hamas, who said it had been holding secret talks with the U.S. in the days leading up to his release. Hamas said Alexander's release was meant as part of, quote, steps taken to establish a ceasefire with Israel. But a ceasefire has still not come. Deadly Israeli bombardment of Gaza continues daily, while 53 hostages remain in captivity there, more than half of whom are believed to be dead. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Washington.
Goliath the tortoise had a big celebration on Sunday as he marked his first Father's Day. NPR's Ayanna Archie reports he also turned 135 years old at a zoo in Miami.
Goliath's hatchling was born in early June after incubating for about 4 months. It is the first Galapagos tortoise hatchling born at Zoo Miami. Goliath had been matched with several female tortoises to breed, but the process had been unsuccessful until he mated with Sweet Pea. The zoo has submitted applications to the Guinness Book of World Records to consider Goliath for the title of oldest first-time father in history. Ayanna Archie, NPR News.
I'm Windsor Johnston, NPR News in Washington.